Thanks, Michael, for being here again. Um, I want to first ask if everyone could just do one thing, and that is relax. I'd like this to be conversation and relaxed. I have a cup of coffee. I want us to enjoy our time. We all deserve a break, too, from ordinary discourse around our issues. We'll have those, but let's relax and enjoy ourselves and have a conversation and feel free. Michael and I had a nice talk about how we could just make this a great session of conversation and maybe leading to others down the road. And that you guys can feel free also with your help, Fatma, anyone else, to exchange a few thoughts in Turkish if you like, and communicate those to us if you have any things we can be included on. So let's relax and I'm just say a couple things to start because my moderation, the way we talked about it, will be mostly Michael present issues related to questions that we have, and I have a couple to start, but that I'll interject a pause, and we'll take a little break where you guys can form a question or topic, issue. So is that okay? I hope it is. I just want to start briefly with, a lot of what I do now, the way I organize my thoughts is on the fly. Everybody is improvising now. Things are so complicated. And Michael came on and was talking about some, built-in tensions, international political economic tensions that we all live with and live on top of, and talking about a border wall. And recently, I took a trip down to our border wall, the new border wall. I have a couple photos that I took, and so we're, what we're facing. And I just have a couple photos and I'll share my screen and hope I'm successful. The first one is a picture of the border wall that's going up. It's going up on our southern border. This works.
Do you want to share the screen, guys?
Yeah. Can you enable the screen?
Just a moment.
It's just, get started a little bit. Michael got me thinking about these walls.
Yes, now you can do that. You are the co-host.
Okay. I'll click share screen. You bear with us for a second. There it is. There it is. Whoa.
Yes.
There it
It's
is.
here.
I got in under the barriers and me and my little dog, we went and looked at our commander's border wall. And that's it, the border between Mexico and the United States. I got another one, it shows it going up. As I was coming up onto the site, I see this crane, this machine that's building the wall. And I went in and I talked to a couple of the workers, and I also talked to the Border Patrol guy that was there. And it was really something to see this. It's a powerful reinforcement of some of the issues that are upon us now how we think about the predators and the ferocious contention that's occurring globally. But in our region, this is one manifestation. So it got me thinking. It got me thinking about that machine and how it's a work in progress. This effort to block peoples. It's a continued work in progress. And what we do as teachers sometimes feels like, it's our daily effort. We go to schools that have been built by machines like this. This crane was built our schools. And also, what do we build? What can we build now? And when we think back to our homes, and I see your homes, you see mine, my little office, and what do we do each day when we go to work or we go to, and a couple of themes that I want to bring up about how to consider building in opposition to the negative, in opposition to those things which separate us and separate us from our dreams. And so that little border wall is significant. But I want to say something that also moved me 2 days ago when an enormous rainstorm came 2 days ago. And this rainstorm came on this river where they're building the border wall. And many people had warned that this border wall was not serious or not well done. It was destroyed. The rain completely destroyed everything. It's all gone now. So nature had its way and maybe sent a message. Back to a couple other things. Let me take a look at my notes. Stop share, right? No more sharing? I can look at my own.
You can share.
Later on, I'll have a few other things later, but right now I just want to start a couple questions from Michael and get you all thinking. Fatma, you guys have considered some questions and issues, and I looked at the list and I sort of want to incorporate my thoughts, my question from Michael. In that same list, one of the things that occurs to me that's important is that as we struggle or as we worry, as we have these conditions facing us as teachers, educators, how do we keep our spirits alive? How do we keep our energy? How do we encourage each other? And I like to think of every action, every move we make as a form of organization, where teachers unite, where educators unite and come together. And I think that informal connection, like this one right here, is a centerpiece. So this idea of the union of teachers facing together our problems is very important. How do we keep our spirits up? And there's a powerful phrase that has come into really the world vocabulary, and it comes from a homegrown source that I won't elaborate on now, of our organizational tradition, our tradition of resistance in the U.S. And it came from the mouth of an organizer who has become a spiritual figure almost, a mythical figure. But he was a real person. He was an immigrant. His name was Joe Hill. He was an immigrant organizer. And at the end, I want to show a couple small things about him. And he was killed. He was killed by the forces of power that wanted to stop the voice of an organizer. And in trying to cheer his sad followers. He wrote a letter from jail before his execution when they were weeping and saying, how sad they were. And he just simply said, look, don't mourn me. Don't waste time mourning me. Organize. And this don't mourn, organize has become a theme. And efforts to organize are important. Now, I think of Michael in your lifetime of work, and reviewing your lifetime has been a powerful experience for me. To see your lifetime dedication and your not only your publications, which are numerous and have been influential, but your acts of organization, your travel, your connections. And I think it is so apt that you're here. And I think about my time in Turkey and what I've learned, some things that I've learned, what you're grappling with. You have a generation of organizational minds that really begin, who knows when, but certainly in the late Ottoman reforms, before the revolution, the idea of unions of teachers become a reality in Turkey, Anatolia. And teacher power, the idea of teacher power, which built after the revolution around the institutions like the village institutes. Then years of political shocks, coups, attempted coups, and now faced with these market economy solutions. I'd like to just run something by Michael. You had written you wrote a book that was with Lenny Beyer, who's a great educator, and you really outlined some thoughts about how to contend with current conditions and the current conditions of marketization. Who controls the selection and distribution of knowledge. You outlined this in your work with Lanny, and what knowledge is of most worth. And I go back again, and I'll finish here. I'll go back to George Counts and his question: dare the schools build a new social order? It was written in the 30s. Michael, can you say just a couple things about how educators can work not only on the broad scale, but day to day, and small and large acts of organization to try to move us to contend with these forces of marketization and reproduction of our current neoliberal ideas. Can you respond to that a little bit, Michael? And
yeah, there's so much I want to say now. As usual, you provoke me and everyone else in powerful and insightful ways. Your use of Joe Hill is interesting. I'm a kid from the slums of Paterson, New Jersey. Paterson, New Jersey is the home of the first general communist strike in the United States.
That's right.
It was called, it's the most powerful textile city in the United States. Come from a family of printers. So I'm first generation finishing secondary school in my family. But because we were printers, the struggle over critical literacy is absolutely central to our lives. And when I decided I wanted to be a teacher, the family had a party. Capital P, Communist Party, but also small p for that is what people should do. That is the task of printers, is to make visible the collective memories of people, to provide the tools for work, for becoming someone else, and that is not just accepting. And I must admit, the roots of much of my work are from my family, but also the anger at the fact that I was never, and my culture and history was never represented in the school curriculum. I come from a family of of people being murdered in Russia before the revolution, of being political exiles, and knowing that that history was so important to Patterson. So when someone asks me where I am from, even though I have lived in Madison, Wisconsin for 50 years, I say Patterson. And people say, why? I say, because that is who I am. So it's interesting about this. I want to use your metaphor of space and the border wall to try and talk a little bit about this. The politics of space is crucial in how we think about this. Let me give two examples of it. And it also talks about the struggles of how we keep our spirits alive and how that very complicated word "we" can be rebuilt and expanded consciously through political and cultural work. In the early 90s, I was invited as the first person to give a political talk during the years of the military dictatorship in South Korea. I don't want to spend a lot of time on why I was chosen to do this or what the struggles were, but it was through the teachers' union. The teachers' union had been ruled as illegal in Korea because it wanted to change the curriculum and wanted teachers to have power. In order for me to go through the campus to get to this giant lecture hall, the army and the police had tear gas cannons and all kinds of things, and the students had kept one gate open. And in order for me to get there, somehow the army had to be convinced that I should be let in. And somehow the students and faculty won this, but I had to promise I could speak about the United States, but not speak about Korea, which is fine because the same kinds of things that are going on under Trump and under so many nations here are exactly what were going on as students were not free to mobilize, as the curriculum had censors, so teachers could not speak about critical material and about critical pedagogic work or new curriculum. As I was walking through, the students gave me a wreath to put on my head called made out of tear gas canisters, which looked like small apples. It looked like something that Jesus would wear. It's actually quite, so many of these murals that are paintings that have Jesus with a wreath on his head, that's what I looked like without wanting to be as fine a political and religious mobilizer as Jesus Cristo. So I walk through and I'm wearing the things that keep the space unoccupied, that is keeping the students out of it. And they take the symbol of that, which is the tear gas canister. It looks like a hand grenade, like an apple, and put it on my head to represent that the space is now owned again by them and by me. It's a small thing, but as I walked in, everyone stood and cheered, not for me, but at what the symbol was on my head. Now that seems like a very simple thing, but it reminds me constantly that winning back space starts with small things. It wasn't the aggressive thing of, we will march and we will fight and we will battle. It was Joe Hill saying, don't mourn, take the resources that you have and use them to win back symbolically and then really the space. Yeah. When I went back, let me just finish this. Went back the last time, I was in that same space, which is the university entrance gate on the edge of the city with this square that the students mobilized in and unions mobilized in. And it now has McDonald's and Pizza Hut and Kentucky Fried Chicken. Very distressing, okay? The restaurants I boycott. But that space no longer has the memory. So we had a long discussion about what we could do to restore the curriculum of the space. So as you walk through, there's these large light fixtures. And one of the ideas that we had that people are still thinking about and trying to mobilize over is to make giant photographs that would be hung from the light fixtures of the students mobilizing, of the teachers union mobilizing, of people doing anti-military movements. So one of the ideas that we're trying to work on, and we're doing this in many, many places, is to recapture the politics of the curriculum of the space, having the space teach others about what has been lost, what's the memories that have been lost. The last thing about this is turned into, on public buses in Seoul, art fixtures have now been affixed. So as you walk in to pay your fare on the public bus, going to the university and elsewhere, there's a seat with a lifelike sculpture that literally it's a piece of art, but it looks like a woman who is a comfort woman, a woman who was raped by Japanese soldiers. And the Japanese government has never responded adequately to the rapes and often suicides of hundreds of thousands of Korean women. And as you walk onto the bus, there is the woman sitting there, recapturing the space of memory. So I want to use these two things, the apple cluster, okay, winning back part of the space, the border wall, if you will, and the comfort woman statue, sculpture, as ways of saying part of the task is to restore the memory. And sometimes that is what we do. Educators are about the keeping and restoring and struggles over what culture counts. And the restoration of the memory is absolutely central. I want to use those as two examples of public pedagogy, of winning back the space of memory, even if the government says you can't teach it officially. Okay? So I'll stop, Guy. I went on too long, but I want to, that's my mind as I think about what can be done. What's the practice that might allow us to win back knowledge space?
Yeah, Mike, that gets me thinking a lot about the schools as spaces and places. And I remember when I was in Ankara and I was teaching, I was stimulated to revisit and to visit anew the memories that are built in our own culture of song and literature in my own country that were marginal in my consciousness. But the Turks reminded me of how important it is to have that in the front of your consciousness. And those guys could sing and recall and had so much on the front, at the front of their minds. And it inspired me to look deeper into our own world. And one of the things I did, and it was I understood and I knew something about our new left and our old left, some things, but I was stimulated to revisit that world. And one of the things that really occurred to me as a powerful stimulant was sometimes on our campuses, students are very not when we came up, but now students are very quiet and very separate. And I walked in, it had been a very important big mine disaster in Turkey, and I walked into the student canteen and students had built a little altar with coal and a miner's helmet on it. And it struck me. It just struck me. It never left my mind. And I began to study. And that's how I really discovered the idea of the one big union, one of the great organizing forces in the early part of the 19th century, the Wobblies, the industrial workers of the world. And I went in and I found Joe Hill there. this we have three letters that sort of are a group that started from friends that I met in Fatma and many others. How do we call our group? We call it the One Big Union, the OBU. And I love the metaphor. I love the metaphor, and this is part of what we're doing right now. Even right now, we're holding space. This is space, and this space matters. And I'm just kind of thinking along with some of the issues that have been important in Turkey, like the under the supposed interest in making students more critically literate or more connected to curriculum. They've had curriculum reforms, which have actually thrown out textbooks and thrown out sources of history, and it's been a hard thing. And now the issue of the day-to-day and what you can do daily to be a part of organizing for what we call the language of freedom. Michael, you talk about your family as printers, and this idea of the word, the importance of the word is this powerful, essential logos, the engine of our humanity. And that's a big thing. And Fatma, I'd like to really push to have you guys come in with a question, thought, just to start.
Yes,
Move into including some of the guys that are on the. Everyone has a chance to have a question or a thought. Again, we're conversation. This is this is, I want to say it's vacation time. It is. We're on vacation a little bit. Let's relax. So many people are actually on vacation. They've gone away to clear their minds. And it's important. And so what do you think, Fatma? Engage some of our
Yes, you started with a very good example, the border wall, and that we talked about that before your visit, and just after your visit, the wall fall down by the flood, by the river.
Yeah, I know.
So we talked about, cursing or whatever it is, what happened to the wall, the commander's wall. Anyhow, place and space. This was a very good example to our memories about place and space. And then we went to Korea with Michael's memories there. And I'm sure all participants here remembered some places and spaces in Turkey too, related to this. The squares, streets, and our protests, our street marches. But more than this, we have classrooms and campuses as university teachers. And within the classrooms, which has a space, which is a place for us, very important. And now we are deprived of these spaces and places and memories, or they will be just memories in future. We don't know. So deprivation of these places and spaces. And we understand the importance of these places and spaces, whatever they are. Maybe we were critical about these places, these things over there, but now they are very important in our life. We realize that. We are learning this. This is a big lesson of how classrooms, how being in classrooms together, how existence in the classroom was so important for us.
Yeah.
survival. It was surviving. It was the meaning of existence for us. So
Okay.
space there, place there, in the borders, in Korea, in the streets, in protests, but the classrooms, that we are deprived of our classrooms.
What can we do? Let's hear from some people in
Yeah,
the audience.
let's discuss this, yes.
What can we do? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can participate, dear guests, our friends, our colleagues, you can participate. You can just unmute yourself and
Just unmute, raise your hand. You know, the only thing I remember from when I went to teachers college, the only thing I remember, pedagogical technique that I remember is the concept of wait time. You ask a question and you wait. So we're waiting.
actually it should be very short, right? But this is another platform, I don't know. Okay, Michael, what do you think about this deprivation? I just want to discuss this with you, maybe.
This is a complicated issue. One of the things, well, let me preface it by saying something I think I mentioned last time. There must have been victories. Classrooms, you know, because of our emphasis on reproduction of class and race and gender realities through schools, which was absolutely crucial to deal with. I think that we've become too cynical about what can and does go on in schools. And when that is removed, when we don't have classrooms, when we've desocialized education, when it's done in individual homes for those people who actually have a home, or when it's done through digital means for those people who can actually have a computer or have space to use it or have the internet. Now we begin to realize that there was a victory there. That is, the idea of forming a community, which sometimes is utopian, given all the pressures and defunding of schools and neoliberal agendas and the attacks on teachers' unions and on faculty at universities, all of that's going on. But why would the right, why would authoritarians be so angry and want to desocialize our understandings of education? Why would they be so, as we say in the United States, so pissed off, so angry? Or as my mother used to say, Michael, always remember it is better to be pissed off than pissed on. My mother had that. She was a communist. She was allowed to do that. Anyway, but we have to ask, why would these authoritarian populists be so angry about the things that we criticize if there weren't also victories? Now that's the first step, it seems to me, because like you, Fatima, and others, I feel like part of me is gone. Right? So even though we are building a community here digitally, it's not the same as sort of this wash of warmth that I get when I walk into a classroom or walk into a seminar room or walk into a political meeting and there's hugs. You know, some of the things that Guy's points about memories remind me of when I was teaching in a high crime area in Paterson, New Jersey, in the same schools I went to. And a couple of kids came in sobbing. I was teaching 4th grade. So these are 10 and 11-year-olds. And my first reaction was to hug the children, just to say, come here. And they're sobbing for about half an hour because they are brothers and sisters, a young boy and a young girl, twins, and their mother had died. But they needed the school. And in the United States right now, in most states, it is against the law for Michael as teacher to touch a child, to hug the child. Now, if we take that as a metaphor, one of the things that were victories is that the teacher attempts to build a community, sometimes fails, and it is much more difficult now. And we're seeing in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as an example, and other places that Guy will be familiar with, or Detroit or Milwaukee in the United States, class sizes are going up. So even if the teacher wants to build a community, it's almost impossible to do it. So we begin to understand that the things that we worked on for so long as teachers, reducing class size, having some autonomy, being able to be a real human being with kids, we tended to take that for granted.
Can I jump in? Michael, can I jump in? On that
Please.
point? On that point, I want to ask, okay, I can ask a question specifically of all the teachers, all the educators in our group, all of us really. You're talking about your hometown, and I still, when people say, where are you from? I say Chicago. And it's in your heart, it's in your center. And one of the things that just happened in my hometown, and I was very proud of this, was that teachers, and this was not reported, teachers got together in their unions, in their organizing groups, and they demanded of the city that they not go back and die in classrooms. And we just heard, the city announced that teachers will teach online, at least to begin. No mention was made that if they had not done that, the entire city would have shut down. The teachers would have all struck. They would have all gone on strike. And that great tradition is alive in Chicago, the way it was in the struggle for the 8-hour day and the struggle for rights in the early, it's still there. So in Turkey, the struggles are still there, but they are not reported often. I'm curious, a group, anyone, please jump in. Is it possible or difficult to organize? What does the union mean? Can it mean anything under these conditions? You guys in Turkey, you have a union history, and you have Eğitim Sen, and are unions a possibility now? Or have they been really, is it very difficult? Because it was not easy in Chicago, and it's not easy around the country to do such a thing. I'm curious, anyone talk about, can unions help? Can union power help?
Maybe Hasan Hoca has a long experience with unions in different forms.
Is Hasan there? Did he come in?
Yes, he's here. Yes, we have people here with experience of different forms of unions.
Mm-hmm.
It is teachers union, it is halk evleri, people houses or public rooms, whatever it is in the first years of the republic, different forms. And Hasan Hoca is one of the founders of those public houses, public rooms in Ankara, as I remember correctly, right? Okay, there was a problem, a technical problem. Hasan Hocam, you are one of the first people maybe the founder of public rooms in Turkey, which has a very long history from the beginning of Republic, Turkish Republic, foundation of Turkish Republic. Those public houses were the first unions, maybe in intellectual meaning, in education meaning. People were educated there, and later on, many intellectuals were, influential in the intellectual world of Turkey. The developmental process, the progressive, the enlightenment. Actually, it is the people's enlightenment houses. What do you think? Because we have been talking about the unions.
Am I open?
Yes, you.
Yes.
You are. Yes.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
We can hear you.
Yes, son.
Hocam, there's a connection problem.
I actually listened Michael and Guy a few minutes clearly, but then voice cut. I understood the reasons in Turkey for enlightenment of teachers and other people related with education, maybe. Is it true what I understood?
Yeah, we were talking about the union power. Is union power, is it possible now?
Yeah. Is my voice coming?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Good. Hi to all. Good to see you, Michael and Guy. Very glad to see you here, and I'm very sorry I couldn't reach on time. I was outside to write someone. Yeah, I was a member of union, especially for personal history, maybe, but Turkey has a long history from 60s, 68s. Turkish Teachers Union, because strongly it transformed into another unions when they closed by the authorities, by the coup d'etat, by any legal interruptions. But it was very important us that people was there with their consciousness. No matter one union or association, legal community, if you are here with your consciousness, it is very easy. It is very easy to get a union. But what is going on now is unions idea going out slowly because of the conflict inside of the unions. And there's some kind of hope or hopeful interactions are getting decreased. This causes maybe lack of energy to make to make deal with the problems of the education and the country, labor problems or any kind of problems teachers should be involved in. What causes this? Some problems becomes very first, but it should not be maybe. some internal conflicts make our unions divided. So it's getting little. Some get the silence, just not for scaring, for fearing or authority, but internal fiction. We don't feel that this is good to act, to go out. We don't maybe believe that this discourse is valid. Political student movements maybe. We believe that it goes to end, to somewhere. For example, socialist ideas bring us that we can change the world, we can change the country. But now we feel that we cannot change the Turkey, we cannot change the something. Actually, yes, we do. Actually, yes, we can do. But in the environment, political environment, media and all other things say us directly or indirectly. But we know that unions should deal with that kind of discourse with strong messages. But now they turned in Turkey, they turned into their problems. So we are not dealing with the hopeful message and the very good, strongful aims, because we think that right now there is very strong authority and they make problem for us in union level, in personal level, in vocation, our professional level, so we can get unemployed, we can get in trouble, maybe we can be in prison because of these reasons. It makes some kind in personal level the problem to get away from unions. But in total, I would like to summarize that in Turkey there is a consciousness about the political level that unions is important associations to make change and interrupt the situation or oppressive situation. But it cannot go something else. We don't know where to go. We don't know where to go because we are in different position. We are in different position. In situation right now, I am saying that if you will be successful, you will hang me first level because we are thinking different way in different education system, educational content, lifestyle, any kind Marxist or radical left critical ways. In some little problems becomes very important. First one problem. We maybe think on all problems first, create a new discourse, what we are going to do for what, which kind of society we should to reach. In this problem, we are not clear at this stage in Turkey. Still, I can say that Turkish people, left people, Turkish teachers associations has power in their side. Nobody thought that Gezi movement can flourish in Turkey, but there was a power inside people. The reason and the moment they know it was good, very good to move. But then what? It should not be enough to say no, because we show in by unions, by associations, we can say no. But then what? What for? This discourse maybe we need to work for by unions, by another associations, by people, by neighborhoods, because like David Harvey mentioned here that uh, traditional organizations from unions need to get spread to the neighborhood, life circles, life areas, another life areas, because we are live there without we don't have job, so we cannot go into the unions, but we have power to act as neighborhood associations. I'm a member of neighborhood association in my neighborhood. I joined a lot of actions in there. I am a member. A lot of activities for.
I have a question for Hassan. Fatma?
Problem, yeah.
Hassan, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
And so I remember very well, Jamie and I went to an action in your neighborhood association in Vatikant. You know, and that was, for me, amazing. It reminds me that there is community power and consciousness. There's consciousness everywhere. And like you say, in these community organizations, and keeping consciousness, your theme, alive in the different ways that are possible. You know, that consciousness is in a way, it's the primary before organizing. And it's difficult, though, because, yes, we are in this deep crisis now. Every country, deep crisis. And we have to have different ways of thinking. And I thought about unions, but also neighborhoods, and just, Fatma, we talked in our group when we had class, we talked about these public buildings. They're here. We have so many problems, but we still have these public buildings that we were given. And Michael is talking about, look, we can't go into a building now. We can't walk in to see kids. We can't walk in with colleagues very much. These are hard conditions. And we have to think of new ways to keep our spirits up, to keep that warmth that Michael talked about, that spirit feeling that you get when you're together. How to keep that. What do you think, Fatma? And Hassan, I mean, how do we keep our spirit?
Yeah, I think this is one way that we are doing now, what we are doing now, getting together and keeping in contact all the time, maybe more technology, using more technology, and then, keep together. Keep our students, especially our students, they feel deprived of, and they just get lost. Some of them get lost in this process.
Yeah, but let me one thing on that. Students get lost. We forget, We're worried. We're frightful. We're concerned. Our students, how do they feel? And what can we, the idea of the one big union, one of the reasons I love that idea is, Hassan is talking about neighborhood organizations or many unemployed people, many people worried about employment. And what I liked about the one big union and their philosophy was that everyone can join. The unemployed can join a union. Everyone, men, women, immigrant, any human being can join. And so I like the idea, and this idea of every human being is in a one big union across the world. And that's part of for me, that's part of my spirit. But it's an asymmetric, it's not symmetrical anymore. But this is part of it. And Michael, what do you do to keep your spirit alive?
Let me respond first to something that you said and that Hassan said. Last time when I talked, I mentioned that there's a tension in unions, that we have a dual role. First, the word we, remember, is always dangerous. And when Guy is talking about forming a larger we, that's a task of unions throughout the world. If it is just industrial unionization, struggling over working conditions, pay, healthcare, etc., which are absolutely central, we will lose our understanding of why the right and authoritarians are winning. We can't just be defensive of gains that have been made before, even when those gains have been taken away. So social justice unionism becomes a vision that becomes crucial, which is, how do I increase the we? And how is the right winning? And from books of mine that have been translated into Turkish, I spent a lot of time trying to understand, why is the right winning? Because I think too much of critical pedagogic work is simply rhetorical. It's nice sounding words, but in the meantime, if you're deeply religious, you're going to move to the right. That's happening in the United States. It's happening under Bolsonaro. It's happening in Poland and Hungary. That is a disaster. So how is it that people who, it's not automatic that people who believe in, sort of get their meaning from religious forms move to the right? It's not automatic. Right? So for instance, when I was in Korea, by the way, the end of that story, I was arrested in Korea, coming out. But the next time I went there, the government apologized and said, we will now pay for you to come back. Now that's not a hymn to me. That's saying that people there took seriously that you could mobilize against the military government over issues that are important to people. So having people who are unemployed, who are fearful, who feel like they don't have a voice, doesn't mean that they're going to turn to the right. The right is the last of the true Gramscians. They know what the hell they're doing. They understand that talking in a way that doesn't require quoting from Foucault, or in my case, from Gramsci and Marx, that it doesn't require that when you're working in a community. It requires that you listen carefully, that you talk in different ways, that you listen to people's heartfelt demands to change the lives of their children and the lives of the elderly and about healthcare, etc. We're seeing that with Trump here and certainly in Turkey. So part of the task, it seems to me, is not just to criticize them, though we have to do that. It's say, how do we have to change? How do we incorporate a larger we? So when Guy gave the example of teachers mobilizing, by the way, with communities in Chicago or Los Angeles or in London or in my city, Madison, teachers mobilize with parents to say, we don't want our kids to die either. And unless you get better ventilation in schools and smaller class sizes and pay to have nurses in the schools now rather than firing more of them. All of that went on in a joint way of building a counter-hegemonic alliance. So part of my response to both Hassan and also to Guy's question is, what is it about unions that have to be changed at the same time as we have to defend them to our deaths? And part of the task is to tell the stories that Hassan is telling, or that Guy is telling, or that people in schools throughout Turkey or throughout the United States, or now through Brazil. What are people actually doing? We can theorize it later on, but I am so tired of critical pedagogues pretending to understand what is going on in people's daily lives in communities and classrooms and pontificating about it, and then using it for professional advancement at universities, which is a real site of struggle, and that's important, especially for women faculty in almost all of our nations, or minoritized faculty, so don't misread me. But we have to, in many ways, begin to say, how do we open a space so that we are taught by real union folks, by real folks who feel like their children are under threat, by the homeless people in Ankara and Istanbul, in Milwaukee, in Albuquerque, in Tucson, etc. You'll forgive me for getting emotional about this, but if we can't get emotional about this, what are we doing? Right? So when I listen to Hassan saying, or when Janet talks to me about what's going on in Ankara at METU and the struggles over students and faculties there, it has to be that Michael has to be a learner on this. I have to understand that there are real risks in doing this. And I think that we are silly if we say, why don't you act? And then as Hassan mentioned, well, you know, it's easy for Michael to say this at a distance. But in the meantime, if a union here does it, as you know, we can be jailed, we can lose our positions. And that's not a discourse, that's a reality. And that's going on throughout the world. So you forgive me for reminding us, not that we shouldn't put ourselves, that it's not my role to say, here's what you should do. It is your role to tell me what you are doing to protect yourselves in times of inequality and to protect each other from having to deal with a regime in Brazil or in my own nation where Trump is saying exactly what Guy was talking about. Or our Minister of Education, Betsy DeVos, who's a billionaire, who has a yacht the size of our campus, right? Saying, if you don't open schools right now, and teachers, if you don't go to work, we will cut your budgets. We will simply close you down. We will fire you. So, you know, my plea is we need to understand that part of our task is to teach each other by opening up the space that Hassan or Janet or others can have a conversation like we're trying to have today, answering Fatima's questions, answering Hassan's questions, answering Guy's questions that say, what do I do on Monday? And then with the victory on Monday, how do I defend it on Tuesday and Wednesday? Because I can assure you that the right and authoritarians never rest, never. So every victory that a union will make is temporary unless we also listen to each other and say, what did you do to defend this so that people did not get fired, did not lose their position, could connect with the community? I'm sorry I go on long about this, but I think this is absolutely crucial. This is pure Gramsci. This is about what's called a war of position. Every damn thing counts.
Yeah.
So you forgive me for going on a rant here.
No forgiveness. You're not forgiven. You should go on a rant. It's a rant is necessary. I mean, the war of position remind me of so many things, Michael, and all of us. of what do you do on Monday? You know, in your profession, one thing, one little thing, one position, one move. That's so important, Michael. Really, I mean, it's crucial. And
I'm always reminded of Raymond Williams when he says, "Let's remember, this is a long revolution."
yeah, a long march. It's a long. And Martin Luther King, the arc, the arc. Yeah, the arc of justice. Maybe, you know,
it's not automatic, you know, unless, let's be honest, unless people do take risks, nothing will change. But those must be tactical and strategic and careful. It doesn't help any of us if people lose their jobs all over Turkey. It doesn't help any of us if people in other nations all get fired. Right? Because we will be replaced by people who do this. I don't know whether there's a body thing in Turkey. In the United States, we do this. And it's called, which way is the wind blowing? Go with the wind. I won't fight the wind. I'll see which way the dominant groups want me to move. They're like the wind. So that's not the answer. And if we neglect the ability to think very tactically about how do we defend the we, how do we defend groups like this, when we're gone, we will be replaced by people who do this. And I know from my own experiences in too many nations, what happens if we don't think about not just what do I do on Monday, but how do I defend what do I do on Monday? And unless I can get the community working with Hassan, trusting him and him trusting them, or students working with Janet or Fatima or Esdir, others, if I don't do that, we all can predict what will happen. So I think that our theory must be guided by the strategic understandings of real people's lives and our ability, and I hope our willingness to fight not just for ourselves, but for other people whom we need to defend us as well. I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm in church here. I'm giving this.
No.
You see that Janet has her hand raised.
Yes. Maybe I should take this. It is difficult to talk when I use this headset. Michael, actually, what you say is, I mean, something is happening here in Turkey, and it is very good example of what you are saying, I think. That's the women's protests, and then their, I mean, let's say the actions against the removal of Istanbul Act. I mean, Istanbul Act is about the prevention of prevention of violence at home. So Turkey signed this at the first place, and then later in these days, the rightists, actually, not the rightists, fundamentalists, said that these are against our culture. Women should not have voice at home, and then we should be removing our signature from this Istanbul Act. And then they accepted some of the laws. They actually regulate some of laws about this, and then they want to give up all of them. And then
We can't hear you. It's muted again.
okay.
Okay, that's better.
So they are going to discuss this in the parliament on 13th of August. In the last maybe 20 days, women are all on the streets, and there's all on the social media, very different women groups. And then they are talking about this, and they are protesting, and then they say that we can never, you cannot do this. We are not going to let you to do this. And then there are some examples of women protesting, and then the parliament just removed some of the discussions or some of the proposal, let's say, because of women's protests. So in Turkey, women are actually mobilized in these days because it is more related to them. And then when something fundamentalists say something, it is like related to our life. And then they are trying to remove some of our rights. So that's why women are very active in these days. What about in the United States? I don't know if there is something like this in the United States, that the women are more active in some of the, or most of the social problems. What do you think? Do you observe something like this?
Well, definitely. In fact, if I were to say, what are the two groups in leadership right now of social mobilizations in the United States? It would be anti-racist mobilizations, where the leaders tend to be women, and the women's movement about controlling their own bodies. And these are, this is exactly what I mean about expanding the we. So with traditional industrial unionization, places class is the dominant form. I'm an old class actor myself, so I don't want to dismiss that. But one of the things that's going on are alliances now between traditional unions and women's mobilizations and anti-racist mobilizations. And that has required that people have had to say, it's sort of old popular front politics. The big union kind of thing that Guy was talking about. The largest mobilizations against Donald Trump, and again, as I joked last time, I will not call him my president. He resides in the White House, so he is our resident, not our president. Largest mobilizations on the first week of his inauguration were millions and millions of people led by women's groups.
Yes.
And that has continued. When I think about what's going on, for instance, in Guatemala right now, or in Brazil, or in Chile and Argentina, it is often women's mobilizations at the forefront, and students. And these alliances between mothers and students become crucial. So you may have followed what's been going on in Portland in the United States, where many protests against the murders of Black women and men have been going on. And Trump sent federal police and the army in there, who then beat people. A group of women, and this is now going on nationally, formed a barricade, the Moms for Peace. And they stood between the tear gas canisters, the police with guns and clubs, and they didn't accept it, but they were beaten, and they put their bodies at risk. And if we were to say, why were the troops removed from Portland, Oregon, it's because people were horrified that the women were subjected to male violence one more time. And this was the official presidential act of sending in to beat the women. So symbolically, as well as putting their lives on the line, women in leadership are absolutely central to any recent mobilization. So thank you for these. Really
yesterday, in the protest in Izmir, women police was beating the women protester. So that was very actually interesting. And so the authority, I mean, when people are in the authority, I mean, in power, it is same, I think. They exercise the same thing. That was ironic, actually. And then women policies are just beating the women and trying to arrest them.
Yeah. Well, we have this vision that, those people who are in favor of certain rights, then that extends to all people's rights. That's not true. I have too many memories of being president of a teachers union where many people were in favor of women's rights and equalizing pensions. As an example, when I was teaching in the inner cities, women teachers with master's degrees were paid the same amount of money as men teachers with bachelor's degrees. So there was a different salary scale. So women were mobilizing for women's rights, but many of them were utterly racist unconsciously in their classrooms. So if a Black young girl answered a very difficult mathematics question on a test correctly, the teachers would be surprised that a Black student would be smart. So it's not unusual, again, to see that people who can be, I am fighting for women's rights by becoming a police officer, can also not be in favor of women's rights when women are doing the things that make them feel guilty. So it makes our politics a little more complicated, but changing social societies and transforming education and the police is complicated. That's the first lesson. And it again points to the fact that we have to think constantly about how complicated this is and what a politics that includes more people might be. Otherwise, we're going to get our friends beating us up. And a lot of working class people will beat up political activists too. That's not nice, and we have to fight against that. So.
Fatma.
Okay, thank you for this contribution, Cennet and Hasan Hoca, and also, of course, Guy.
Yeah, no, first of all, one of my contributions is to extend a whole tradition of thinking about curriculum. Okay? And in my mind, curriculum is the entire environment of a school. So I think that if we limit it just to sort of this commodified thing called the knowledge that we teach, that's very limiting. So I was one of the people originally that began to think about what is the hidden curriculum in the environment itself. So if you ever read any of my stuff from Ideology and Curriculum, as an example, I point to a kindergarten where the spatial relations taught children that what was work stuff was there. You could easily access it. What was play stuff was up high and children couldn't access it. So the distinction between work and play was very, very important. And there was sort of a Bowles and Gintis kind of argument that by and large, the spatial relationships in classrooms were classed and raced and gendered, okay? But as an aside, the hidden curriculum can sometimes be progressive, not just retrogressive. So the example I gave of teachers struggling, and there are now union actions on this, to allow teachers to touch children, to actually hug them, arms around them, points to a victory in a hidden curriculum that says, under neoliberalism, you are seen as a commodity producing profits. That's all you will be valued for. Will the school interrupt that? Can we have a person who's an authority figure that you may want to call Mr. Apple, right? But when you're feeling horrible, Mr. Apple becomes Michael and provides a space within an institutional form that says your feelings count in this environment. Because if you're hired by a bank or to collect garbage in Ankara or to sell cigarettes on the street because you don't have a job, you will be treated like garbage. Okay? So let's remember again that the hidden curriculum is a complicated kind of thing. And that's very important because in my introductory remarks responding to Guy, I gave some things that people might say, well, good teachers do that anyway. That's not critical. But under neoliberal agendas, actually, what we used to say isn't very critical now becomes very critical. To humanize the space. Yep. Isn't what we're supposed to be about. Now, if we don't take it further and say, what is it about this political economy under neoliberalism that prevents us from humanizing spaces, then it's almost useless. And it's just Michael as a nice person being nice to children so the children like him or her. It has to go beyond that. But the entire school environment becomes crucial. So right now, for instance, at universities, many professors are being not replaced. And we are now at universities purchasing a curriculum that Michael will design for Guy, or Guy will design for Fatima, and Fatima will design for Hassan or someone else, or for Janet. So that environment now, using technology that we are using to form a counter-hegemonic community, has another message, which is teachers are unimportant. A famous teacher can be purchased and give the class, and Fatima or Guy or Michael or any of us can now be replaced by a lower paid person who will now act as a teaching assistant, and we can let go of faculty. Or highly skilled teachers as part of the teachers union, Ejit Sen as an example, right, are not necessary because we can purchase it and put it online, and the teacher there is just the manager. So under neoliberal forms, new forms of hidden curriculum are evolving that meet the needs of neoliberal and neoconservative agendas. But it does mean we have to think about two things: what's positive, what's been a victory about the hidden curriculum, what's a defeat, and what are the ways in which authoritarian forms are putting in place things that destroy teaching, that make it simply instruction. Okay? So I could go on. Yeah, as you know, I've written a lot of books on this.
With that, Michael, can I interject something? It's a great.
Oh, please.
You're describing the neo-industrialization of sort of a postmodern industrialization of our spaces, and that's a real key. And I don't mean to act like this is a game show and this is our lightning round, but let's get some other questions. These guys have so many things they want to explore with you. So can we get another question and make it kind of a lightning round a little bit, a shot at it, and then we'll get through these. Not all of them, but just, okay. What do you think, Fatma? Next question.
Maybe before we should check again if the participants want to join with their comments or questions.
Please do. Anybody.
If there is no, we can continue with the questions.
And I know Michael and I are both comfortable if you guys want to converse in Turkish for a bit and talk to us. I mean, that's whatever you decide.
Yes, you can write your questions in the chat box. Also, in Turkish, maybe we can translate.
Yeah, we're relaxed. I know it's difficult. We're all conditioned, for formality, but let's try to anybody who wants to talk in a relaxed way.
When Guy was talking about the neo-industrialization, that's what's going on. So look, teaching is a combination of emotional labor, intellectual labor, and social labor. And anyone who thinks that teaching is not one of the most highly skilled jobs has never been in a classroom. Yeah. It requires immense skill, immense sensitivity. what we're seeing in many ways is de-skilling. That is, teachers make, research in the United States is between 5,000 to 10,000 individual decisions a day. That is a truly remarkable figure. It's frightening, and it should be generate utmost respect. One of the benefits of the COVID-19 thing is that with many of these kids in the United States being in the home all the time now, parents now have to understand how skilled and emotionally draining teachers are. And alliances between teachers and parents now are becoming quite profound and very strong. So there's a side to this that I just want to applaud. So we're seeing the loss of skills, not because the skills weren't there, but if you're not called upon to use them, then you're just uncomfortable with them. And I made that point when we talked about COVID last time, that if you're not called upon to use skills, then you sort of lose them. Now, there is no doubt that with the competency-based stuff and the measurement through standardized tests, those things that are most easily measured and most easily taught are the things that are seen as highly skilled. So we can theorize this about histories of the labor process, but that is exactly what's going on. In fact, one of my great worries right now is that in the United States, where teachers and parents have said, can we not do the standardized testing? Because 50% of the students are not really in school right now. They don't have computers, they don't have an internet, or they're in resistance to it because it's so boring to sit by a screen all day. So the standardized tests then don't just have an effect on teachers and the de-skilling of it, but they also are leading to an exacerbation, a reproduction of racial and class divisions. It is a perfect formula. If poor kids are just alienated or not even present because of not having computers, not having internet, et cetera, being homeless, then standardized tests give this veneer like a screen where you look at everything and say everything's fine. But most of the kids who are not going to do well on the standardized test are minoritized, are poor. So it's a perfect formula for the reproduction of the worst kinds of divisions and for the destruction of teachers. Okay?
Yeah.
We can't understand de-skilling unless we understand intensification. They're a couplet in some ways about what Guy has called neo-industrialization.
Speed up.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. So there's more to do, less time to do it, and fewer resources. I mentioned earlier, for instance, that in many schools right now, teachers, the teacher aides are being let go. School nurses are being let go. Art teachers, physical education teachers are being let go. So I mentioned last time that in many cities in the United States, they're simply not replaced because of the economic crisis. And class sizes are getting larger and larger. That leads to much more work on the part of teachers. It's what we might call both the destruction of intellectual labor, but the destruction of emotional forms. That is, there is no time. So it's not that teachers don't want to do these kinds of things that personalize, but there is no time to do it. So you've got now to respond not just to your intensification of your own previous things that you do in classrooms, but you're now doing the work of half a dozen other people who are no longer present. Now, it's even worse in that what is going on about this is masked by things like, we can't afford it. And by the way, that is true. So what happens is it's also an intensification of the labor of school boards, of building principals who feel like they have no choice but to deal with it. And if they complain, they're fired. Now, in the United States, teachers' unions are for teachers only. They are not also administrators or often nurses or other kinds of people who work in a school, like the women who cook lunches for the children, as an example. And that means that many people who want to complain, who justifiably want to say, you're forcing me to do this to my teachers, will be fired. They don't have tenure. And my younger son is a principal of a very large secondary school. And he will call once or twice a week saying, Dad and Mom, what do I do now? Because they tell me I must do this, but they've cut my budget by 25%. Or these teachers have left and they have now put even more standardized competency-based instruction in place, but I can't replace the math teacher or the science teacher or the literacy teacher or the history teacher. What am I supposed to do? So we want to, again, broaden this not just to the intensification of the work of teachers, but many administrators in the United States are former teachers themselves who got into this to make it better for teachers. So my younger son was president of a teachers union and felt that by becoming an administrator, he could make the life of people like himself better. That's a bit like false consciousness, I think. But on the other hand, I want always to remember what is going on here with the intensification of the other people who must also work in the school and in the buildings. So one of the ways we can fight this is to broaden the union. So as an example, some unions in the United States now have administrators, have school nurses, have people who are janitors who clean the buildings, have teacher aides, and that is the wisest thing you can do right now.
Can I jump in, Michael? You know, you talked many years ago about the great restoration of privilege that was going on during our time. And this restoration, part of it is something we don't have control over, truthfully, except our political lives. This intensification of the starvation of the Commonwealth on the part of the ruling classes. I mean, tremendous is a small word for the inequality that's developed and the starvation of the public sectors. I think this is foundational, and we have to understand it's not only the current crisis, but it's a crisis built on a crisis, which is this tremendous starvation that's going on. And everyone is struggling, and it's not just the U.S., it's worldwide. So, yeah.
Some of the best examples of this, by the way, are in Turkey. Further, I'm certain you can fill this in yourselves, where money will go into massive projects, but the school feels starved, or the healthcare system feels starved. This is going on. This is the neoliberal agenda. Okay? It's not the only agenda. Fundamentalism goes with it often in many nations where money is spent to keep one's legitimacy for particular religious activists, etc. That's going on in Brazil right now very, very powerfully. So we have to think about what's the big union of authoritarianism? And that has formed an alliance, as I mentioned last time, that is extraordinarily powerful, very, very powerful. It means that we have to be very creative about where the money is going. So, thank you, Gar.
You want to have a thought or a comment or?
Yes, Michael, this is very true that similar things, there's a pattern of neoliberalism and together with neoconservatism in your words, So they're wedding, these two concepts wedding together with cooperation, have an agenda and have a pattern. Everywhere in the world, almost everywhere in the world. Something happens in Brazil, and then when we read that in newspapers, we think that, oh, the same here. Something happens in Portland, in Tucson, in schools, about teachers, about students, about standard tests, whatever it is. When we read this in an article or in your book, for example, we see ourselves. That's why, you know, your being here is very important. I have been, you know, teaching several courses in graduate level, and when we read your articles, your writings, and also guys, you know, seminars, and he was a guest speaker in some of my classes, and you know, we just see ourselves in the examples of your country, or in the you know, comments, in the interpretation of the things, of the politics in your mind, because we read your mind through those writings, and it is the pattern that works everywhere.
Let me say one thing in response to Fatima. Not just important for you, it's important for me. Because when I'm, one of the things that Guy is pushed about this having a conversation, I need to learn from you. You know, if I'm going to be serious about my work, it's not just a slogan. I have to put myself in a position where I am criticized, but also where I'm constantly taught. So when you say you see Turkey and what's going on there in what I say, that's also because when I come, I am constantly taught. And when I mentioned last time, this sort of feels like coming home. My teachers are, some of them on the screen right now. And that's actually very important. This is collective. And unless I am willing to think about what's going on in Turkey, I shouldn't be talking to people in Turkey unless I'm willing to do that. Anyway, so just thank you.
Do we have a time we must end?
When you
I
get
have to
tired,
leave.
you can
Well, I have a suggestion, if it's okay, Michael. You know, one of the points you made in the book with Lanny Beyer was the dimension of the aesthetic, and the importance of the meaning of the arts that we are trying to teach in these places we call school. And I have a song I'd like to play that was if it's okay. Not I have it queued up, and it is a song by one of the great cultural activists and actors in our time, Joan Baez, who went on a very popular concert and interjected a powerful song that we talked about at the beginning, which was the song written about Joe Hill, and the song written in his memory to organize. And this was done during the Vietnam War, Civil Rights Movement. It appeared at Woodstock, and it's just beautiful. And I'd like to invite you all to see it. But I actually would like to play it, to have John play us out, if that's okay, Michael.
Yeah, well, I'll probably sing along with it, and I have it on an old cassette tape.
That's it.
And me too, Guy. You know, John Baez is one of the loved singers in Turkey too, and she is the singer of, she is the music of, voice of protests, our young protesters.
Well, let me.
We know that.
This is 3 minutes long. Is it okay to play it?
Yes.
Of course.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. If I'm able to, how do I share my screen? How do I share my screen? Thing. Share my screen.
Just, it is below, okay.
And here she is.
Young Baez.
1968.
And Baez, yes.
Anyway, this is an organizing song. was happy to find out that after David had been in jail for 2.5 weeks, he already had a very, very good hunger strike going with 42 federal prisoners, none of whom were draft people. So I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. As I could show you're 10 years dead, I never died, said he. I never died, said he. The copper bosses killed you, Joe. They shot you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe. I didn't die, says Joe. I didn't die. And standing there, big as life, and smiling with his eyes, says Joe, they can never kill. Went on to organize, went on to organize. From San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill, where working men defend their rights, it's there you find Joe Hill. It's there you find Joe Hill. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I could show you 10 years dead, I never died, said he. I never died, said he.
Yes, so, and she
Thank
is
you, guys. This was great.
standing in the rain.
Yeah, the strongest message.
There was a lot of rain pouring in 1968, and there's a lot of rain coming down now, but this is just an idea about a big union. And this has really been a special day for me, I know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now Naciye Hocam has a message here. She invites all participants, all educators, university workers to join the Teachers Union in Turkey, the biggest one, the long-lasted one, and yeah, and the leftist one, Eğitim Sen. Thank you, Naciye Hocam. This is good, and this is very meaningful, actually, maybe to close the session. I hope it helped us to think again and to get together. Buyurun hocam. Yes.
Affedersiniz, kestim because
Estağfurullah.
I interrupt you. Maybe give the message. Actually, it was not an invite thing to give a short note, a kind of information that in Turkey, all kinds of stuff, even in university stuff and professors, teachers, any kind persons, exception for rector and deans and presidents of institutions and the other teachers can be a member of the same unit. I am a member of Eğitim Sen another cooker or another maintenance is a member of Eğitim Sen. We work together. We also struggle together. Head of 5 numbered unions was a staff in credit dormitory buildings for students. He was very good, and he was leading to professors and other teachers in university level. We were so learning to behave equal sense, how we live together, work in different areas. Not all time we have a title. It doesn't mean that we have hierarchical level interaction or relation. So it's a job. But here we are in struggle. In struggle, the title doesn't work, should not work. But it work actually. It work actually at everywhere. We should learn how to evolve in our daily life in unions also. Unions is a kind of, I can't say actually what I think, because there is a lot of people who like to use it because they don't see their very bad situation, but a couple little problems can be go to media surmanşet, how can I say that, to show left-wing unions or something, other organizations problem. So we should criticize ourselves first and learn from our relations, what we do, how we should evolve in revolutionary way. We should evaluate our daily life and our relations with our students and other friends, maybe in family or also in our professors, teachers in union and in school relationship should change by us. Okay, thank you very much. I should note that we are living in the way dear Michael mentioned Cooker and other teachers should be in the same union.
Yes, Hasan. Yes, Hasan Hocam, thank you. This is a very good closing, actually. I want to say, being a part of a union, any union, formal, informal, makes you feel stronger, makes you more powerful. I can say this from my own experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hate to do this, but I do have to go now.
Okay.
I just want to thank everyone again, and I hope we can do this again at some time. And I want to thank Guy as well, and everyone who's been involved in this. And I hope at some time to see you in Turkey.
Yes, we will be in contact. Please take care, and thank you for your contribution to our big union.
Good. Stay safe, everyone, and stay strong.
You too.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, Guy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Fatma.
This has been very, very stimulating, actually, for us, and interaction was good, and the music was good.
It was really nice to see everybody again and talk.
Thank you.